The sleepover game. It was a dark and stormy Friday night, and Bluey and Bingo were having their very first sleepover in the living room. Mom and Dad had set up a cozy fort with blankets and pillows, and the girls were beyond excited to stay up late and tell scary stories. "This is going to be the best sleepover ever," Bluey declared, bouncing on her makeshift bed as lightning flashed outside the windows. Bingo clutched her favorite stuffed animal, a little orange rabbit named Carrot. "As long as we don't get too scared," she whispered, glancing nervously at the shadows dancing on the walls. "Don't worry, Bingo," Bluey said confidently. "It's just us and we're safe inside. What could possibly go wrong?" As if summoned by her words, the power suddenly went out, plunging the house into complete darkness. The only light came from the occasional flash of lightning outside, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move and twist on their own. "Mom! Dad!" Both girls called out, but there was no answer. The house felt strangely quiet, as if it were holding its breath. Bluey fumbled for the flashlight they'd brought for their fort. When she finally clicked it on, the beam revealed something that made both sisters gasp. Their cozy living room looked completely different. The furniture had been rearranged, and strange symbols were drawn on the walls in what looked like chalk. "Bluey," Bingo whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't think we're in our house anymore." The flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing more disturbing details. Family photos on the mantel showed faces they didn't recognize. Twisted, grinning faces with too many teeth and eyes that seemed to follow their movement. The familiar couch had become an old, tattered piece of furniture covered in dust and cobwebs. "This has to be another one of Dad's games," Bluey said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "He's probably hiding somewhere, waiting to jump out and surprise us." But as they called out for their parents again, their voices seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. The house felt bigger somehow, with hallways stretching longer than they remembered and rooms that shouldn't exist. A soft scratching sound came from the walls, like tiny claws moving inside the plaster. Then came the whispers, children's voices, but not quite right, speaking words they couldn't understand in a language that sounded ancient and wrong. "We need to find Mum and Dad," Bingo said, gripping Carrot so tightly her knuckles turned white. They ventured out of their fort, the flashlight beam their only protection against the oppressive darkness. The kitchen, when they reached it, was a nightmare version of their familiar space. The refrigerator hummed with an ominous tone, and when Bluey opened it, instead of food, they found shelves lined with old, dusty jars containing things that moved in the shadows. The scratching in the walls grew louder, and now they could hear footsteps above them, slow, deliberate steps that didn't sound like their parents' familiar gait. The footsteps seemed to be following them, always staying directly overhead no matter where they moved. "Bluey, I want to go home," Bingo whimpered, tears starting to form in her eyes. "We are home," Bluey replied, but even she was beginning to doubt it. "This is just a really elaborate game. It has to be." They climbed the stairs to find their parents, each step creaking ominously under their weight. The hallway upstairs was longer than it should be, with doors leading to rooms they'd never seen before. Behind one door, they could hear what sounded like a music box playing a haunting lullaby. Behind another, the sound of children laughing, but the laughter was hollow and echoing, as if coming from very far away. When they finally reached their parents' bedroom, they found it empty. The bed was made, but it looked like it hadn't been slept in for years. Dust covered everything, and spider webs hung in the corners like tattered curtains. "Where are they?" Bingo asked, her voice barely a whisper. That's when they heard it, their mother's voice, calling from downstairs. But something was wrong with it. The voice was too high, too sing-song, and it was calling their names in a way that made their skin crawl. "Bluey, Bingo, come play with us. We've been waiting so long." The sisters looked at each other, both knowing instinctively that whatever was calling them wasn't their mother. The voice continued, joined by what sounded like their father's voice, but distorted and wrong. "We're down here, girls, in the basement. Come find us. We have such wonderful games to play." But their house didn't have a basement. As they stood frozen in terror, They heard the sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by familiar footsteps and voices. Their real parents, returning from what sounded like a quick trip to the store. "Girls? How are you doing in there?" came Chili's genuine, warm voice. "We brought some extra snacks for your sleepover," added Bandit's cheerful tone. The moment their parents' real voices filled the house, everything snapped back to normal. The lights flickered on, the furniture returned to its proper places, and the strange symbols on the walls vanished as if they'd never been there. Bluey and Bingo raced downstairs and threw themselves into their parents' arms, both talking at once about the terrifying experience they just had. "Whoa, whoa, slow down," Bandit laughed, setting down a bag of treats. "What's all this about a different house and strange voices? The power went out, and everything changed," Bluey explained breathlessly. "And there were scary faces in the photos," Bingo added, still clutching Carrot. Chili and Bandit exchanged knowing looks. "Ah," Chili said with a gentle smile. "Sounds like you two discovered the sleepover game." "The sleepover game?" both girls asked in unison. "It's an old tradition," Bandit explained, settling down with them in their fort. "When kids have their first sleepover, sometimes their imagination gets so excited that it creates its own adventure. The house becomes a playground for all the stories and fears and excitement swirling around in their minds." "So it wasn't real?" Bingo asked hopefully. "Real is a funny word," Chili said thoughtfully. "Your experience was real to you, and that's what matters. But the scary parts? Those were just your imagination getting a bit carried away in the dark. The best part about the sleepover game," Bandit added with a grin, "is that it always ends the same way, with your family coming home and everything returning to normal." As they settled back into their fort with hot chocolate and stories, Bluey and Bingo felt safe and warm again. The storm outside had passed, and their living room was once again the cozy, familiar space they loved. "Can we play the sleepover game again sometime?" Bluey asked, surprising everyone. "When you're ready for another adventure," Chili smiled. "I'm sure it will find you." And as they drifted off to sleep in their fort, both girls dreamed of exciting adventures where even the scariest moments ended with the comfort of family and the safety of home. Outside, the last rumbles of thunder faded away, and the Healer house settled into peaceful quiet, ready for whatever games tomorrow might bring.